Well, despite an oversupply of skilled labour in many parts of the economy, the latest Clarius Skills report shows there's a significant shortage of managers across a diverse range of industry sectors. The report reveals a shortage of over 3,000 skilled managers in hospitality and a shortfall of over 2,000 in advertising sales. For more, we're joined by Clarius Group CEO Kym. Kym, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
We've also got James White from Colonial First State, our guest host for the hour. Kym, just looking through the survey, an oversupply of workers in the labour market when it comes to skilled occupations, we should say,
yes,
and mostly on the managerial level. Were you surprised to see this?
We've seen it emerging over the last few quarters, actually, and I think there's a combination of forces behind it. One, supply, and one, demand, obviously, as we're starting to see some of these sectors show more positive signs of growth. Demand has increased, but I think in the management sector, that's largely driven by lack of supply due to a change in some of the requirements that organisations are looking for, and the fact there hasn't been investment in management level over the last 3 to 4 years, as that's an area that's been cut from a cost point of view.
I mean, if you look through the sectors, ad sales, retail, hospitality, these are the industries that have been underperforming over the past 5 years. Why now are we seeing a demand for managers? Is it because of that underinvestment you mentioned?
Yeah, and I think if we focus on the sales and marketing aspect of it, you know, at the start of the GFC, I think we saw a lot of organisations take that layer out of their businesses. So that middle management area was the area that really suffered the most. And through a lack of investment in bringing people up through the ranks, that's obviously had an impact on the supply into that sector. Add to that the fact organisations now are spending a lot of time thinking about their advertising strategies and looking at social media as a channel, and really there's a lack of skills in that area that's seeing a huge gap between supply and demand.
I think it's an interesting survey actually, Kate, because one of the key points is that a lot of it's occurring in the services sector, which capital markets necessarily don't actually spend a lot of time thinking about, because these are businesses that are obviously generally don't use a lot of capital, and they're often they're owner-owned or operated and so on. And I think it really highlights that there is growth out there. Also, I think there's a lot of multinationals who work and operate in that space, and it's not an area that we hear a lot about, but that's where a lot of the growth is occurring in the economy, rather than in the traditional sectors that we see in capital markets.
Yeah, definitely. And look, you know, I think for us, that sector starting to show signs of life gives us confidence that businesses are starting to invest back into sales and marketing and back into some of those things that really were on hold, you know, for the last couple of years.
Not the case for engineering, though, and we've seen a collapse in demand there in the skills space. No surprise, we've seen a lot of big projects shelved or scrapped altogether. Is this going to be long-term? Are we going to have a lot of out-of-work engineers in Australia going forward?
I don't believe so. I think what we're seeing obviously is a response to some of the talk about mining and resources potentially not being as strong, and talk about China not having as strong a growth, and that's had a real flow-on effect. I think it will be short-term. We know that when there are big infrastructure projects in play, there is a huge shortage. So very quickly, I think we'll see that return to high levels of shortage again as we see some of these projects come back online, potentially after the election, when there's a little bit more confidence about decision making.
Which just highlights how much we probably need a few more infrastructure projects from a federal level.
Because it's not incremental, as you pointed out, like the other sectors, is it? Exactly. It's all in or all out, and that shows up in the figures. Anything else surprising that you found in this survey?
Look, not really. I think we expected there to be a growth in the oversupply of skills, but I think we just really need to be mindful of the fact that even the oversupply still highlights to some degree there is a skill shortage. It's still hard to find highly skilled people. And the raw numbers assume that everybody that is looking for work and doesn't have a job has the skills necessary to get a job, and I think that's a real challenge. And there is a lot of research that shows in the next, I think McKinsey put a report out last year basically saying across the globe there'll be a shortage of college-educated workers to the tune of 38 to 40 million in 2020. Now that's not far away, and a massive oversupply of unskilled labour. So I think that's something we really need to be mindful of, as we look at policy around.
It does highlight the fact that, how important it is to invest in skills training at an individual level, and particularly where a lot of these sectors are, as I mentioned before. They're not necessarily where you would expect them to be, but it is really important that you have those skills, and
Absolutely.
there will be jobs for these people.
Yeah, and it's the changing dynamic of the global economy. There's plenty of college-educated people more and more. It's the fact that these lower-skilled jobs are no longer existing.
Is it true also, Kym, that perhaps a lot of the skills that are valuable now aren't necessarily the technical skills, but actually being able to work with people and manage, and those sort of soft skills?
Absolutely. We see that more and more where employers are, I think, conscious of the fact that we have worked in highly short markets for skills. You know, it was more hire to train, and just hire the attitude and give the skills to the employees. And I think that's what we've seen over the last couple of years has diminished, and I think we'll pay the price for that further down the track. But as we go into a much tighter skills market, I think organisations will have to look to that as a strategy to get the right people and actually have a strategy to give them the skills required.
There's a great book I'm reading at the moment called To Sell is Human, and is actually about a lot of the skills that we need in this sort of world.
Yeah, definitely.
And that everyone is a salesperson.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kym Quick from Clarius, thank you so much for joining us on the program. We really do appreciate your time. And James White from Colonial First Aid, our guest host from the hour, thank you as well.
Thanks, Kat.
We do need to take a quick break. Stick with us when we come back. Opening calls with ComSex.